Hi, this is Coach AJ, and you're watching a new episode of Living Fully Fit. We're going to dive right into part 2 of our cleanse series, and we're going to look about how we cleanse toxic people. And I'm not just talking about toxic people in the obvious sense, but toxic people in the not so obvious sense. Let me explain. So think about it. You can think of one person in your life who you expend a lot of emotional energy over, but you don't get anything in return. Think about maybe that friend or maybe that family member you pour into, and there's no return. And I'm not saying you should be in relationships to get something, but if you're in a relationship or you're starting a relationship, whether it's romantic or friendship, platonic or family or whatever it is, think about this. How much are you expending versus receiving? Because again, just like any other thing, our lives are like a cup. We can pour and pour and pour of ourselves to others, but how are we feeding ourselves? How are we finding more to pour? Because eventually we're going to go empty. Think about this. You've been in relationships, I know I have, in a relationship where you're the one pouring into them and you're getting nothing back. You're the one being romantic and sweet and all these things, and you're hitting walls. But eventually, what's going to happen is a few things, actually. You're going to get hurt, you're going to get angry, you're going to get frustrated, or you're just going to call it off, right? But either way, there's pain involved in it. But we can avoid a lot of this pain if we identify it early on. If you're the one pouring, but not receiving anything back, because here's the thing is like, part of, giving is getting as well. We have to reciprocate something back, especially in relationships. One person shouldn't be the one pouring in. I always say this, but it shouldn't be 50-50. It should be 100-100. Whether it's a family or friend or romantic relationship, if one person's the one pouring, the other one is just receiving, the one pouring is going to be empty and broken. And that's how we avoid that pain sometimes. So how do we identify that? Well, think about this. Whether it's that friend or family or romantic relationship, it doesn't matter what kind of relationship it is, they all feel the same when you're the one pouring out. And it is a subtle toxic relationship. It's not the obvious of someone belittling you or calling you names or being passive aggressive or gaslighting. Those are the obvious kind of signs of a toxic relationship. But I'm talking about more the subtle signs of a toxic relationship and how we need to cleanse that out. Because we see those obvious ones very easily. Sometimes we're in denial, right? But in all reality, when it comes to the subtle ones, we don't realize it because we think we're doing good by just pouring ourselves. Well, eventually, if I keep pouring myself, maybe they'll give back. Maybe they'll reciprocate. One of these days they will. And we catch ourselves doing this. Well, I keep doing this because this is who I am. This is how I'm made. This is my love language. Hear that one before? This is my love language. This is how I express love. And that's great. I'm not saying don't to change yourself in that aspect, but here's the reality is if you keep expressing that, keep expending that energy, that emotional and mental energy, and you're not getting anything in return, you're going to be drained, burned out, and broken. And how do we avoid that? How do we prevent that? First of all, we have to recognize it early on, not later on, years down the road. Well, I've been pouring into them for years. No, then honestly, that's your fault. I'm sorry. I'm gonna be real here. If you've been pouring to that person for years and they haven't reciprocated, that's your fault at this point. Because you had time early on to recognize and stop it. And I'm not saying there has to be a certain timeline of when you stop it, but it should stop early on. If you're not expending, if you're not recognizing that expenditure and that lack of return, and you're not expressing that, because honestly, here's the reality. Some people just don't know because that's just how they're wired. Maybe they have walls up because of past hurt, past relationship. That's understandable. But they have to take those walls down too to receive fully. That way they can give back as well. And then it's a give and take. And then both parties are giving their all. And I'm not saying that both parties necessarily have to give 100% all the time, but when they're giving their all, maybe both parties are giving 60-60 or 70-70 or 100-100. But when we're both giving our all, which is that 100-100, you know, there's going to be more balance there. And there'll be some days one person's giving more than the other, but irregardless, both parties are giving a lot. They're both expending the same amount of emotional energy. And when both parties are expending that same amount of emotional energy, they're both filling each other. And that develops great and lasting and sustainable relationship. Again, part of the whole trifecta of building fully fit is having fully fit relationships. But we have to be willing and recognize what we need to cut out and who we need to cut out. Because eventually that doesn't have to happen, unfortunately. Do we want to cut out people? No. No one wants to have that mess. No one wants to break up with someone or cut a friend or a family member out of their life. But sometimes that's a necessary action to make sure we're protecting ourselves and our heart and our mind. Because that's what it's going to affect. And then it will affect the other relationships around us. So my challenge to you as you look at your relationships as a whole, whether it's friend, family, romantic, or possible romantic, maybe it's the beginning of a dating relationship, look at those signs. Are you the one only pouring out? Pouring and pouring and pouring and not receiving anything in return? If that's the case, take a step back. Maybe have a conversation. And if that conversation doesn't go anywhere, maybe that's your sign to cleanse the toxic relationship, the subtle toxic relationship, so you can find peace and be more relationally fully fit. I'm Coach AJ. Thanks for watching a new episode of Living Fully Fit. If you like what you watch, make sure to subscribe down below. Every time you subscribe, you get notifications of new content coming up. Also, put a thumbs up and support the channel. I'd also challenge you, if maybe these videos, they've helped you or they don't pertain to you, but you know someone that can help, make sure to share it and put it on your page on Facebook or on Instagram, whatever social media platform you use. Again, all this helps support the channel and helps support other people who need to be a little more fully fit.